collected stories that he felt were intact. They had not been Disneyfied. They had not been over-emotionalized. When I'm training teachers about this, to help them understand that the teaching story really is a very unique genre, I talk about the game of telephone. If you ever sit in a circle and play that funny game of telephone, somebody starts out with a little sentence or something and they whisper into somebody's ear, and then it goes around the circle and it comes back, and you laugh because what it comes out as is not the same as what went in, right? And this is what's happened to a lot of our fables and fairy tales, our Aesop's fables, the Grimm's fables and fairy tales. They've been altered because we've over-emotionalized them. They're moralistic. So they come out, it's kind of like somebody eating your dinner for you and telling you what it tasted like. So you have the end, it's like, and never, and always. Shaw made sure that the stories he was collecting were stories that did not do that. They're intact, they're the way they were told around campfires. The Lion Who Saw Himself in the Water is a story that Rumi told in the 13th century. That's how old that story is. So depending on what level you're at, what age you are, what experiences you've had, where you are in your own development, each time you hear the story, you're going to get something different out of it because nobody's telling you what to think about it, And the characters in the stories and the events that occur mirror our life experiences. And you'll see that in The Lion Who Saw Himself in the Water. And when I usually read the book for the first time and discuss the story with adults when I'm doing a training for teachers, I do this at their level. We don't do it as reading to a child. We start so that they can derive for themselves an understanding of this. I've read these stories aloud for so long, you'd think I'd know everything about them. And believe me, every time I read them, and every time I hear them, and every time I have a 3-year-old tell me what they know, what they learned from it, I learned something else. They're phenomenal in that way.
I first came to know some of the Hoopoe books through the Institute for Cross-Cultural Exchange in Canada that offered educators and organizations an opportunity to work with these books and get them into the hands of families. And it might not have been the first book, but I'm thinking of The Silly Chicken, and I do have it back here. This one.
Yep.
And I remember reading through it, and for those who will be listening to this conversation, the story in a nutshell is about a chicken who can speak in a language that people can actually understand. And so the chicken says amazing things, and the people, because he can speak in a language they understand, believe everything he says. And it causes chaos and panic until they realize that just because he says something doesn't mean it's true. And they have found humor in it. And so now they turn to the chicken as a source of playful fun. And the chicken is able to make them laugh. And it was one of those times when it wasn't just a flat, the moral of the story is, it was this place of what do you take from it? And it will be different depending on what stage of life, whether you're a child who's heard a lot of stories or heard other stories that are similar, or whether it's an adult who's thinking through things in their own experiences. And so that's what you were describing, I think, were these connections and these layers of relationships that teaching stories enable us to enter into, that's different than just learning the moral of the story or specific literacy goals. It's woven with a whole lot of richness, it seems to me.
And the idea with the stories is to learn the stories by heart, not memorize them, but learn them by heart, so that when you come upon a situation, perhaps an example with the silly chicken, where somebody might say something that seems very plausible or shocking, you stop and remember the story. The story comes to you and you remember some of the elements in the story. And so your reaction can be more conscious rather than just an automatic way of thinking about it. That's the idea. And all of these, besides the way the silly children talks, but so because some of the people get very excited about it, everybody does. And so you have to look at how are you influenced by a group of people, maybe who you feel like you want to belong. And so even though maybe in your heart of hearts, you don't really think something's true, you'll go through and kind of join up to be whatever that is. But if you have that story in your mind, then you can say, well, let me think about this before I react that way.